Yeah. This house party is crazy.
Welcome to another edition of Get Your Balls Out. This week we have the two main players of the group because we've seemed to been shafted by everyone else. So we're stuck, which I think we're stuck with the best. So that's what everyone gets for deserting us in our hour of need. But we've got enough to talk about. I think we're going to kick off this week on a slightly different topic of the NFL and the exciting prospects of the draft, which has obviously just occurred the last couple of days. So, Wes, do you want to open us up with a bit of the NFL draft, what it is about, what it means?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people might not know about this. I mean, I think the NFL is becoming bigger and bigger worldwide. So it's just an idea. It's all part of the structure of how the NFL works and how sports in America works. Because this is the same with ice hockey, baseball,
Yeah,
basketball,
everything.
the main sports. They all have a draft. So this is
Yeah.
where the professional teams pick the best players from the collegiate structure, essentially, which is obviously massive in America. In fact, some of the college teams get bigger attendances attend
Yep.
than actually full NFL teams. So
It's cheaper as well, right, to attend the games.
well, you get people like 100,000 people. Can you imagine 100,000 people going to like
Yeah.
essentially here a university
Yeah.
football game or something like that? It's
Mental.
absolutely crazy. But once you've been there, your alumni sort of attached to that college for life. Anyway, so they get the pick, and how it works is the teams all have a record from the last year. The 32 teams in the NFL have a record. The team with the worst record gets to pick first, and the team with the best record, or i.e., the Super Bowl winners, get to pick last. And this year, unlike many other years previously, actually everyone who is having their pick is in the right position because picks can be traded for players and all that sort of. Won't get into the complications of it, but essentially you can trade picks for players and trade picks for multiple picks for a better pick and all that sort of stuff. So everyone's picking where they should be. Now there can be trades in the draft, so you can say, "Oh, I really want this player, and I want to make sure we get him, so we're going to move up." But generally, that means that you have to sacrifice more picks that year, or even next year's picks, which are conditional because obviously you don't know who's going to finish where. And people will pick from what they need. So from the defensive or offensive side of the ball. So it's a big day in the NFL calendar. It lasts for 3 days. The first round is on the Thursday,
Yeah.
rounds 2 and 3 on the Friday, and then rounds 4 to 7 are on the Saturday. And then if you're not picked, you can be spoken to by any of the teams and you are classed as undrafted.
Yeah.
Now, you think, well, why does it matter what round you go in? Well, the first round, you get a 5 year deal, and you will get paid more money being in the first round. As the rounds go down, there are less years of the contract that you get guaranteed, and you get paid less.
And
And
this is
then
the thing, it's kind of like the financial fair play rules in against football, right? It's that salary cap, which I think in some ways is slightly better. You know what I mean? In terms of how they can't just get every single superstar, pay them what they want, make it work. And it's I think that part I think some of the European sports could learn from, right?
yes, they absolutely could. I mean, it's very difficult because it's
Yeah.
intrinsically built into the league. There's no promotion and relegation in the NFL, so
Yeah.
everyone's guaranteed. It's a franchise, so everyone's guaranteed to be in the league. So there's no threat of that,
Yeah.
and it's intrinsically linked to that collegiate system as well. That is where they get the new players from. You can have players from abroad. They're part of the international player
International. Yeah,
program,
yeah.
and they can be put into the draft, but that's difficult. Or they'll come from Europe or wherever, and they'll be in the collegiate system, and then they'll get drafted. But
Yeah.
that's the reason it's kind of difficult to be an international sport because unless you have enough players from each of the different countries, you can't play another country. They could possibly play some place. I mean, I'm not even sure there's enough from Canada. Like they could probably play Canada because Canada got the CFL, which is the Canadian Football League. But this is what irks people. Like, why do you call yourself world champions? Like, you're not actually playing anyone
America
internationally.
is the world.
But apparently, America is the world. I mean, we both love it. Otherwise, we wouldn't be talking about it.
Exactly, yeah.
So that's a rough. Any questions you've got, I'll be trying to answer them. You can put them in the comments, and we'll try and get back to you. But that's the basics of it, and it's exciting. And it may not seem exciting, but it is exciting, and teams get fully behind their picks and everything.
Definitely, yeah. And I think it's obviously, before obviously the draft as well, they have, what's known as the kind of combine, right? Where they have like it's time to go and view these obviously players doing like all the various tests, such as, the kind of high jump, the 40-yard dash, all that kind of stuff, and see them, which I think is quite good because it's not like just going off kind of what people say or, from videotapes, you get to see them actually in that combine and evaluate them and see if they're going to fit the team. So the whole thing is, yeah, it's unique, obviously, as you say, to the way it intrinsically falls across or college landscape and how it all kind of racks up into the main NFL league. But I think it's yeah, I think it's one of the things once you understand it,
Yeah.
it makes a lot of sense and you enjoy it more. If you look at it, and go, what is this 3 days picking people just and they're walking out on stage in like all the fancy garb and stuff? But at USA is like it's all about that experience, right? And it is an experience. I think and we know if you are invested in it, it is a good lot of fun. So I think it's yeah, it was definitely interesting what's happened today.
Mhm.
Obviously the draft picks. I think we know that there's been a number. I think I was looking at last season's sort of overall stats, the talent, and obviously you had sort of Tennessee Titans, one of the lowest with a few of the other teams. And they've struggled in recent years, right? They just haven't got anywhere. So they've obviously come away with the number one pick at quarterback. But and it's something which makes it exciting, right? Although you might get the number one pick, there's no guarantee that the number one pick is going to change your team, right? Because ultimately, like you say, with the franchise thing, and it always comes back to the way it's actually run. I think more than ever, right? I think, if you compare it to just like general like football, even if the club is run not that great, you can still get quite a good result. The teams, the players, you come together. But in kind of American football, that kind of whole hierarchy, the general manager, the head coach, all that kind of stuff, it does seem to all have a massive impact on the actual team, right? And you've seen some things which doesn't work. People get fired left, right, and centre. General managers seem to get, the real slack of it, even if the head coach seems to not be performing right. It's a very different way of things working. But I think, yeah, that's what makes it more exciting that you can get the number one picks for different positions, but there's no guarantee that means you're gonna have the best season, right? Or you're gonna move up in the world. And that's been proven a number of times, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, just because you get the first pick, that's the first pick for what you need, essentially. It's not now that there's a debate like, do you pick what you need or do you pick the best available player? Okay. So there's
Exactly.
those two trains of thought. So do I
Mm.
pick a player where we've got a gap, where we need to recruit a player to fill
Yeah.
this gap? Or we might have a player, but we know this guy is like amazing talent, and we've actually kind of seen that this year in the, the first like three picks. Um, some people say just get the best player available on the board and then make them fit into the process, and other players like no, you've got gaps, you know where you need players, fill the gaps with the draft, and that is actually a more long term way of looking at the thing because you get these guys who are probably range from I suppose 21, they can be up to kind of like 26. It's a lot later in life that they come out of college, depending on how long they've been. And there was a COVID year which extended people's stays at college. They were allowed to stay another year,
Yeah.
get more experience, all that sort of stuff. Um, do you pick the best player? No, I know my team, the Patriots, that we've been previously, we've always been sort of a system picker. We pick the players that we think we need the most.
Yeah.
And also the other thing is that you don't know if they're going to work out or not. You don't. They've played college football, but that is not the NFL. The NFL is a massive step up,
Mm.
and some of them just don't perform. Some of them are outstanding and perform immediately, like Jalen did last year for the Washington Commanders, not Redskins.
Yeah, Jane Daniels, yeah, he
Yeah,
did.
so
Yeah.
there's no guarantee that the player you pick is going to be incredible, but you have to go on what your scouts have done, the combine,
Yeah.
private workouts they also have, so they'll
Yeah.
come and you'll do tests with them just in
Yeah.
private without any cameras. And you like to think, and this is years in the making, like they teams will watch players from high school
Yeah.
before they go to college because you're recruited from high school to college.
Yeah.
You're there for a while. So they are watching, they've got scouts all over the country. They are constantly watching and keeping tabs on people that they think are great. So it is complicated. And as you say, the hierarchy on a team is
Yeah.
very different. There's also a lot of players
A lot of
as well that you've got to manage. You've got a salary cap, which tends to always go up, but
yeah.
you have like players that who then are out of contracts, and there's also complications with that. Um, you have players that are like free agents that can, and then you have restricted free agents, so they can do certain things. They have to the if restricted essentially means that if someone puts an offer in, the team that they are staying with has the right to match that offer, and then they can keep them.
Yeah.
And there's unrestricted free agents who can talk to anyone and go wherever they want. And people get released. And the whole thing, the other thing that you got to remember is that the contracts are central.
Hmm.
Now with the NFL representing this team,
Yeah.
as opposed to in football, for example, you have a contract with the club. It's not with the Premier League, it's with a club.
Yeah.
And then the transfer fee is to transfer the contract or transfer the player to another team. So it's very different in that way. But yeah, the salary cap does try to make it even. The whole idea of the best and the last pick in first class is to try and balance out the power so that generally not one team dominates for a long period. That doesn't always happen because there's lots of variables, but that's the idea of why you pick in that order.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And like you say, going on the size of the team, obviously, NFL team has like 53 player roster for the regular season. But what's actually quite interesting, it's quite difficult if you're in that situation, is that they start the training camp before the season starts of 90 players. And they
Yeah.
have to reduce that down to 53 by the start of the season. So,
Yeah.
you're cutting obviously 37 people at starting. That's like, it's not like simple, like, football. It's like, oh, you're on the bench this week, or you're just, it is kind of like there's a very small number that might, be on the bench or even at home, right? You might not have anyone at home, in terms of like the Premier League and how many players you have because it's such a small number, right? But with that kind of 52 player roster, like, it must be difficult to kind of evaluate everyone, right? And then those obviously ones are kind of, as you say, technically free agents. They've got, they're listed as inactive, right? They can be made available, but they might want to go do different things. But then you also have the ability to have obviously a practice squad of 16 players just to kind of, for like kind of, injuries that happen, which they do
Reserves,
happen a
isn't
lot
it?
in, this is a physical sport. And despite all the padding, which sometimes if you ever watched it, you might think, what the hell are they doing? Like, why are they playing like rugby, right, with no padding? But it's very different, right, in terms of the tackles that are allowed, how they engage. But the injuries happen a lot, right? Especially with like the kind of, these big guys, right? These are big guys, like 6 foot plus guys, 250 pounds plus, like just like hammering each other. Like, there's going to be injuries, right? I'm surprised they don't get more injuries, to be honest, than what they do. But that's why it's such a large squad to kind of accommodate just the way they play. So, yeah. It's very different, crazy kind of size of the squads there that they maintain.
Yeah.
But yeah, all good, all good. So with the Patriots, who have they managed to pick up then in this draft so far?
So, as we're talking now, there's only been the first round was last night.
Yeah,
I tried to stay up, but I fell asleep in all honesty.
so it's not,
So I watched I watched it at about 6:30 this morning because it started at about 1 o'clock. So
yeah,
they just sort of replayed it. So we picked up Will Campbell, who's an offensive tackle from Louisiana State University.
okay,
That's a really good football program. They tend to be there or thereabouts with the collegiate team. Very good program. Now, he is an offensive tackle, which basically means when the quarterback gets the ball, he's that line of huge guys who is trying to stop the defense getting to him.
yeah,
So he either can throw the ball to whoever or make the play. So it's particularly been a problem position for us, which is left tackle, which is
mm,
essentially there's generally five. There's a centre, a
yeah,
left guard, and then a left tackle, and the same with the right tackle and right, depending on your defensive formation
mm,
or offensive formation. Um, so he'll be on the far left. So that's generally with a right-handed thrower. So if you imagine, I've got my little prop here. If you've got a right-handed thrower,
yeah,
you'd be looking, your arm is looking to go that way. So left would be coming to essentially the quarterback's blind side. So
yeah,
it's really important you have a strong player there so that they're kept safe because the play happens when the quarterback stays on his feet.
yeah.
That's when he can complete the pass. So it's really important. If you don't have that, often your quarterback can get sacked. That's the end of
Oh,
the
he's got a rush, right, as
day.
well,
It
which,
makes it
yeah,
really difficult, and he can get injured.
yeah,
Quarterback is a key position. So we've needed one of these for like 8 years, and we haven't had a good one.
yeah,
We've tried stop gaps, but we haven't drafted one. But this guy looks mean. He's big. There's a couple of things about it sounds ridiculous about his reach.
mm,
He's only got, I think he only got 33-inch arms. I'm just thinking, well, how does that make a difference? But essentially, it means you can cover more area. If you think about it, if
yeah,
someone's trying to go round you, the longer your wingspan, I've got quite a large one because I'm like 6'2", not that you'd know that, but the wider your reach is, the more area you can cover. So if someone tries to go right or left, you can move. So it's a real needed position. it's not what they'd call a sexy position. The sexy positions tend to be like quarterback, wide receiver.
Running back.
I don't know about running backs are vital and
Yeah, vital.
necessary. And
Yeah,
if you've got a particularly good one, that can be essentially offensive. It's like football.
yeah,
What's a sexy signing? Well, a striker or a
yeah,
a winger. No one wants to sign a defender because they're boring and
yeah,
but they're necessary.
yeah,
So we've got this guy to keep our quarterback upright. We had a number 3 pick last year because we weren't very good that year either. Picked our quarterback for the future, and now we need to keep him upright so he can do his job. So that's what Will Campbell will do. Listen to his interviews, very emotional about being picked and really wanted to play for the Patriots, which is really nice to see. I've listened to some of the podcasts today, and he's like, I want to fight and die for this team. It's all the stuff that is very American, but it's what you
yeah,
want to hear
yeah,
from your players. He really loves the Patriots. They paid him a lot of attention ever since he sort of started in the college, and this is where the relationship builds up. They really want to be there. They kind of knew, everyone kind of knew the order that people were going to be picked in. Big surprises like Shadur Sanders. They thought he was going to be in probably maybe picked by the Giants because they need a quarterback, but the Giants have made the decision to pick someone else. So, and not being funny, we picked work because we needed him. But if the number 2 pick and the number 3 pick, who we're going to talk to about in a minute, if they were available, I'm pretty sure that we would have taken them, but they weren't. So we got what we needed, and
yeah.
he's probably the best defensive player on the board. So very happy we got him. We needed him.
Yeah. And do you think? I mean, obviously, you Patriots have, unfortunately been spoiled with the
Yeah,
quarterback position, and I don't, it's a bit like, when a real key player leaves on such a long time, it's hard to fill that void, right? So obviously, you had,
no,
what was it?
Tom
Uh,
Brady.
Tom Brady. No, no, who came in? What was his name? The young guy, Mac, wasn't it?
Oh, Mac Jones. Yeah,
Mac Jones, isn't it? And then obviously, you've seen gone to Drake May now, right? Do you
yeah.
think, have you seen, obviously, he had a bad season again last season. Have you seen the potential in Drake May? Is it just kind of he needs, like you said, that left tackle was a missing position? Do you think this is going to make the difference this season? Or do you think there's still, unfortunately, you're going to have to have a couple more seasons, couple more, better draft picks to kind of build yourself up? Like, where are you at?
Well, I think the big thing, I think, looking from because we actually had Jacoby Brissett last season because he
Hmm.
sort of led the attack and he was sort of a veteran, and then it got to a point where we were like, okay, well, we're not going to be competing for playoffs or anything. So then we put Drake May in,
Yeah,
and that was the whole idea. I think they kind of wanted it's called a red shirt season, essentially, where it's where you practice and you learn the plays and you're not
yeah,
exposed necessarily to a lot. You might be a little bit of game time, but potentially trying to protect them so that they get used to the rhythm and how fast it is and everything they've got to do. So I do think he's good when he's allowed to play. He was aggressive and he hit throws, but he had a big problem. He didn't have weapons. He didn't have wide receivers. He didn't have people to throw to. When he had people to throw to, and they're like in the situations and they worked, actually we did quite well.
mm,
But that was just a makeshift team. That was a Jared Mayo sort of first time coach. I felt sorry for him being fired up like kind of after one season, but I felt it was a necessity. And
mm,
we've got, I think, a really good head coach now, Mike Vrabel, come from the Tennessee Titans. He got them into the playoffs quite a few seasons. He's an ex-Patriot player. He won, I think, 2 or 3 Super Bowls with us, so he knows the building, he knows the family, the
yeah,
Kraft family, and he knows what the Patriots are all about. So I think he's a massive signing. We also had a massive gap um, in our budget essentially. So our salary cap, we had a large amount of money that wasn't being spent, and we went out in free agency and we went a bit crazy. We signed Milton Williams from the Philadelphia Eagles, so just won the Super Bowl. I
yeah,
think we've got like $105 million contract for like 5 years.
yeah.
But he was super disruptive. A lot of people saying, "Oh, you overpaid for a Super Bowl player," but that is tend to what happened. People win a Super Bowl and then they say they get paid.
Yeah,
So that's where you're at the height of your value. You're going to get the biggest contracts
yeah,
because you've shown you're a successful part of the team. He took that. He came to the Patriots. That's a big thing. So we spent a lot of money. We've got a lot of experienced players in, really good players, really good coach, and I think the draft is the final bit to sort of fill in those gaps and build for the future.
yeah,
So I think actually we'll be a lot better this season. I think if you can keep Drake May up, and he is our guy, then we will do better. I'm not sure we will be. I don't think we'll be Super Bowl contenders. I think we'll be a lot more competitive.
Yeah.
I'd like to think. I still think Buffalo will probably be the best team in our division, but
Yeah.
I'd like
Yeah.
to think we'll be above Miami, and everyone's above the New York Jets, apart from us the last couple of seasons,
Yeah.
um, but only just. So I think we'll do better. I think we might be in a shout with a wild card playoff situation. We're not going to be in the top ones, but we might be challenging for the wild card, possibly. But to be honest, after last season, I think we won 4 games. The really annoying thing about last season is we were ahead, and I think we lost like 4 or 5 very, very late. And that is soul. It's like conceding a 92nd minute winner to the other team.
Exactly.
Soul destroying,
Yeah.
absolutely soul destroying. So actually, I think we were better than actually our record suggested, and we could have been the worst team if it wasn't for I think we like won the last game, which meant that we had the number 4 pick, not the number 1.
Yeah.
Which there's a thing about, oh well, you could have thrown the last game, but actually for the integrity of the sport, you don't ever really want to do that. You
No.
could have, but
Yeah.
how do you do that and not make it look obvious? Anyway, we are where we are. I think we'll do better. We're not going to be the Tom Brady's of the 2005s, the dynasty where we're winning everything. But we will be better. Not as good as your guys, I don't think, but we'll be better. And I'd like to think we challenge for a wild card spot.
Yeah, no, it's good, man. No, it's good to hear. I think, Patriots are, one of the legacy teams, right? Even if you don't support them, you kind of want them to do well in a weird kind of way, just because of the history of that team and what they achieved, right, in terms of, that era with Bill Belichick and Brady and Gronk and everyone else that was involved. I think it was just, a crazy time. But to be fair, I think from my side, that the Chiefs are just it kind of got shown up obviously in the Super Bowl, right? When that first Super Bowl that obviously the Mahomes got to second one and played Tom Brady, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, right? So the second one. We obviously were horrendously exposed with so many injuries on the offensive linesmen, right? And that really did us in because you saw, like you said, the pocket collapse and Mahomes just running out of it, legging it everywhere, trying to get the ball off because he had no protection. So obviously, you said we've got the number 31 pick, 31st pick from this Josh Simmons from Ohio State left tackle who looks decent. And I think that will really help. Like you say, that is a problem area, the left tackle, right? It's a bit like in football, left back. There just seems to be few and far between, right? It's kind of like, you got to be left hand or left footed, right, to play there in football. It's the same thing, right? You need that one who's actually naturally there, left hand dominant, right, to be on that side to kind of control it. So, and that's good. I think, you need that, and that's what we're going to get. But we also did sign in free agency Jalen Moore, which would be interesting because he's left tackle. So we're bolstering up that line. So I think it's going to do us some good favors because we definitely, when we tend to like go wrong, is when like the offensive line is just not firing, and Mahomes then does kind of what Mahomes does, which sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's kind of Marmite right with that, right? Some quarterbacks never leave the pocket, right? They're literally glued. They might, sort of dance a little bit inside the pocket, but they never leave it, right? But you got ones obviously like Lamar Jackson, obviously Josh Allen and Mahomes, who are all, top quarterbacks who do leave the pocket, right? But I think you always need to be able to rely on the pockets. You don't feel the need to constantly like rush, you got rush yardage and pick up an injury, and that has definitely led to some of the losses that we've seen. So I think they're doing the right thing with the Chiefs, obviously, because we were second, obviously last season. We've only got 4 more picks. I think we've got a 63rd pick, 66th, 95th, and then 133rd, and then after that, round seven, there's a few picks from round seven, so we'll see what we get. You never know. Sometimes you get stars that come out. You never know, right? So nothing to say about it, but so not a lot. Obviously, it's kind of the main one for us. And if we get someone in round 2 at 63rd, then we'll see who that is. That could be a fairly good one. But I think we're gonna hopefully have the right starting to help us go again. Shame we didn't obviously three-peat last season, but it's never been done right in NFL, the three-peat. And
I
I
was
think
happy about that, to be honest.
yeah, exactly. I think everyone was, to be honest. There weren't any more kind of stuff going right for the Chiefs. But I think it does show that I think the way the structure of NFL is set up, right, that, even Brady couldn't do it, although they won 6, he couldn't do it in that three-peat way because of the way the kind of picks work and who, you get the lowest pick and stuff. And then, you have that salary cap. So it does try and make it more balanced and fair. Even if you're a struggling team, you have the opportunity to fire right up the ranks with the right picks, with the right
Yeah.
players. And that is definitely a bonus, which you don't, unfortunately, see in kind of the Premier League, right? Where when teams get promoted from the Championship, they have to really spend big and have the recruitment spot on to be able
Mhm.
to move themselves into the mid range of the table. But very few teams will ever, I know this season's been completely off track, but the top six are the top six because they have the money, they can afford the players, right? And everyone underneath is like, as we say, the middle of the park midfield teams because they don't get the money to get these world class players. They don't get European football, so they don't get the world class players. They want the Champions League. So, and obviously that's just the way, obviously, football or soccer. If you've got any American viewers listening to it, obviously works. That's just the way it obviously, it works in football terms. But I think it's a shame because some of the ways that the NFL works, like you say, the whole American sports system does have certain benefits, right? And it would be interesting to just see a bit more balance in some of the kind of teams you get in football, right? Which doesn't always happen.
No, I mean, when you have a closed system, which is what American sports have, and you don't have promotion or relegation,
Yeah.
like, even with like say the MLS, they do have like a second division,
Yeah.
but there isn't any method of that the winners of that division moving into the MLS. It just because it's closed, and so that means that you can do and that sort of process of the
Yeah.
draft. It means that you can do that. I mean, I suppose the opposite would be you go right. Whoever's in the Premier League now is in the Premier League now, like
Yeah.
forever, and then like prize money. Um, you put a limit on salaries, and they're trying to do financial fair play, but it's impossible to do.
Yeah.
But essentially, you'd give the most money to 20th, and then the
Yeah.
least money to first.
Yeah.
You don't
Yeah.
have a
That's
college
it.
system where you pick players.
Yeah.
So that next year that team will have a load more money, so they
Got a
should be able to
chance to
get
get
better
some.
players
Yeah.
and all that sort of stuff. It just doesn't work. You have to do it
No.
from the outset, and so that's what they've done from the outset.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean Kansas, big team now. I think a massive team now.
Yeah.
Thanks to their performance, especially in America, but I think also perhaps some association with a certain female pop star.
Oh no,
I
we
know.
were big before. We were big before
No,
that.
no, no. You were big before. You were big before. But when Taylor Swift is dating your tight end
Yeah.
for a long period of time, you suddenly get a massive influx of fans. I
It's
know
true.
that
It does happen.
I bought my daughter. She's got a Chiefs Kelsey top. I bought her that from another Swiftie who it didn't fit.
Yeah, there you go.
So she's got a Kelsey top, and actually I introduced her to the Super Bowl. Not last. She watched it this
Yeah.
year, but I introduced her the year before,
Yeah, yeah.
and she actually enjoyed it. She thought these grown guys beating the hell out of each other was really, really entertaining.
Yeah.
Obviously, I think it's a very good way to go in the Super Bowl because the Super
Yeah.
Bowl is the best two teams, so you
Yeah.
probably see the best type of football.
Yeah.
Also, there is a halftime show, which obviously
There we go.
is a big deal, and
Yeah.
people getting that gig
Mm.
is a big deal as well. So it kind of breaks it up a little bit. And generally on the coverage, especially in the UK, they tend to sort of explain the rules a bit, break it down, so it's a little bit easier
Yeah.
to watch and understand what they're trying to do. If you're watching it with somebody who's familiar with NFL, they can explain it all what's going on. And I kind of did, and I just said,
Yeah.
ask me any questions. So it's really good that she's got into that, and she will watch it with me. So I've allowed her to be a Kansas City Chief fan. My son's not so lucky; he's a Patriot, and he's just going to put.
Got no choice. It's been beaten in.
So yeah, but the Chiefs, I think people like them because Mahomes is talented. The only thing I say about the Chiefs is I think that the key players, not necessarily Mahomes, but I think the key players are aging a bit.
Yeah.
Chris Jones is getting on. I think
Yeah.
Kelsey's getting on. I think they didn't want to go out. I think if they'd have won and done the three-peat, I think Kelsey probably would have called it a day.
Yeah.
He wants to go out losing.
No.
I don't think that's how he's built. I mean, they have him and his brother Travis and Jason have a fantastic podcast, which I would recommend listening to because you also get a lot of insight into how things work, things like that. So that's a really good podcast to listen to. But yeah, I think a lot of people like the way that Kansas City play. It's always attacking. Andy Reid is a great coach. It's always a great atmosphere at Arrowhead. That's one of the great stadiums in the NFL. So yeah, there's a lot of love for Kansas City Chiefs, and that's just escalated. And I hope that the younger generation sort of do embrace it, and that's really helped with yeah, Taylor and Travis's sort of romance, which is great for the game.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you know, if you're gonna, you know, if you want some free influencing, you wouldn't say obviously Taylor Swift's gonna do it for you, right? But there you go. You know, these things happen, and you know, it's yeah, obviously, you know, it's a bit like obviously Russell Wilson back in the day, obviously Sierra, right? It's the same thing. You know,
Yeah,
that
yeah,
the Seahawks and stuff. You know, it's the same kind of thing. You get that following when you kind of people see it. Oh, hang on a minute, these are people I follow, like you know, artists. You know, in different kind of things, not sports, but different areas of life, and people obviously like that, right? They like the relationships and they get invested in it. So yeah, definitely plus for us. And I think, you know, my goal is to go to Arrowhead at some point, I think, once my little one's a little bit older. I did introduce her to the Super Bowl last year, and she was 2 months old, so she was in a sling sitting on my lap while I was watching it, because at that point she didn't know what sleep was, right? So she was just half asleep, kept waking up. So it worked quite well for me, and Mrs. loved it because I just had her the whole night watching the Super Bowl. But this year she was in bed for it, so yeah, she wasn't allowed to stay up. But
Well, maybe if this gets a bit successful, Toby, or we can get to a point, I'm sure the Patriots are going to play the Chiefs at some point, so maybe that's what
true. Yeah,
we should try and make a trip for that, kill
should
two
do.
birds with one stone. Because I've never seen them live
No.
in person, and I mean Kansas City is in the basically the middle of nowhere. It's in the middle of America. Boston. I'm obviously big into Boston. I love my Red Sox. I love my
Yeah.
Patriots. Um, I love the Bruins. I'm a bit weird, and I'll probably get comments about this, but Lakers are my basketball team, and everyone will be like, "You can't do that." Like Lakers,
You can't do it. Yeah.
LA, and Boston hate each other
Yeah.
everywhere.
There's
Okay,
the benefits of being
especially,
English, though. There you go. No one can say anything,
yeah,
right?
especially the Celtics and the Lakers. They've had a long history, to the
Yeah.
biggest franchises in basketball. But
Yeah.
it's like, hey, like Kobe, Lakers. Yeah, that's what I got into basketball.
Yeah.
When I got into basketball, so I picked them. And I'm not from Boston, although
No.
you wouldn't be able to tell if I didn't open my mouth. Um, so I made those picks, and do you know what? I'm fine with that. And
Yeah.
I'm not from that country. It's like someone in
No.
America, like JJ Watt. It's like I'm a Burnley fan. It's like you could be less Burnley if you tried. It's only because you own a part of them, but
Yeah.
it's the same thing. America, you pick
Same
whatever
thing.
team you want. You're not from there. But in America,
Exactly.
it's a big thing, isn't it? You support
Yeah.
your local team, where you're from, you support them. But we have the luxury of being able to pick. I know we were talking about this before, but like the Patriots were one of the first teams to come to England and play in England,
Mm,
or we started winning everything. So I picked them when they came over. They played at the old Wembley, which was like, well, quarter of
nice.
a decade ago, sort of
Wow.
99, 2000. So I picked them then, and it just so happens that they've been successful. I mean, that's great.
Yeah. You've
That's
tried.
great for me. But again, it's like sort of how Man United fans have been. They were used to these years and years of being successful,
Yeah.
and now they suck.
Yeah. Very
So
much.
now we're going sort of through that rebuilding stage, and that is the
Yeah.
glorious thing about sport. You can be the best at some point, and then you get come down to the ground with a bump, and
Yeah.
you're like third or fourth worst team in the league. I mean, that's just reality, but it's happened for everyone.
Yeah,
So
exactly. Yeah, and I think like you say with the Chiefs, I think the team is aging slightly in some key areas. So I just to see what also happens during the kind of transfer time before we get into the training camp, see who's obviously brought in to kind of shore up ourselves. I mean, obviously Mahomes is going to be good for a long time.
yeah,
Obviously, our wide receivers we brought in some last year, which will continue to help us. But yeah, I think it's yeah, no, I think it's the one thing with the NFL season, and to be fair it's been like this for the last few seasons in the Premier League, where you know, it's sort of sometimes you don't know who's going to sort of come through. Had all season like when Leicester won it, obviously, and had that was the last probably really weird season, right? When Leicester won it,
absolutely,
which
yeah.
wasn't too long ago, right? What was that? That was I remember now.
18 was it?
18, yeah,
17,
that's it, wasn't it?
18?
Yeah, it's a couple years before COVID, wasn't it? Yeah. Oh, where was it? It was. Just let me look here, my notes. Hmm.
But why are you looking at that? I mean, generally NFL, you do know who the better teams are.
Yeah,
Like, yes, last year no one was surprised. The two best teams got to the final,
yeah,
and I would say it was a shock. I think a lot of people thought the Kansas were going to do it.
yeah,
Philadelphia just turned up. They had the game plan. Their defense just I'd never seen Mahomes like that. And even then he scored, what did they score?
He
Like
did at the
30.
end, didn't he?
He
Like
still
21 at the
scored
end.
like 30 points.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He
But
did.
they
Yeah.
were just all over them. And
Yeah.
yeah, it was and the Eagles deserved it. I don't think anyone could say that they didn't deserve it. I
No,
mean, they
no, they played.
completely
No. Yeah.
trashed that team. And I think at a certain point I just thought, well, Kansas are just in shock.
Yeah, and I think he would. And that by the
They're in
time we
shock here. They couldn't
recovered,
handle it.
now by the time we recovered, like, I think it was like 21 points in the fourth quarter. I think we got, and our defense turned on, and like Mahomes did. But it's like it's too late at that point, right? I mean, they'll never. One thing, Kansas, they'll never go. They never say it's over till it's over, right? To the whistle blows.
No,
They'll
that's
keep
true.
playing, but the way American football works and how they manage the game. Obviously, once you're up to a certain level, just you're in for a very minute chance. But really, something has to really completely go wrong from to lose it. But like you say, Eagles obviously, the last time they played the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, it was just got kind of 3 points in it, right? That last kick, I think that did it. So it wasn't like it was a stone roll then. So I think, yeah, fair play to the Eagles. They deserved it. They were, and I think obviously it's a shame there, isn't it? That obviously, uh, was it Kelsey? Jason Kelsey retired in the year before, I think,
He
after that
did,
happened,
yeah.
which is a
It
shame
would have
because I
been
think it's what he
brothers in
wanted to
the
do. He would have
final
been there.
again.
So I know we don't know if he mentioned that in the podcast, but he might slightly regret obviously retiring. But hey, there's a right time for everyone, right? And I think, when your body says no, it's kind of over, you have to respect that. But I think, yeah, Eagles, their team to beat. I mean, obviously Saquon Barkley was very quiet in obviously the game in the Super Bowl because the
Yeah, he
Chiefs
wasn't in the
were quiet.
season, was he? Yeah.
But the whole season is incredible, best running back there is. But obviously, the Chiefs did put a lot of attention on him as well, though, and that was a problem. So whenever he's on the pitch, it's like when you got that striker in football, right, who gets takes on the defenders, and everyone else just flurries in, and you got all the space.
Yeah.
Kind of thing with the defensive, right? Everyone's looking at what's he going to do, what's he going to do. I think Eagles set themselves up with those plays to kind of. Well, he did do a few runs, but when he's on the field, he didn't always get the ball, and it was like the dummies and stuff, and that kind of threw. And then obviously, or you've got like obviously Brown and stuff with the right receiver. Just they had all the weapons right on target, like you say. They turned up and they put a stake in the ground. So it's going to be. I think it's going to be another exciting season in the NFL, right? It always is every season. When it starts, it's always so much fun.
Yeah, I mean that's the killer about the NFL season.
Yeah,
So it's the season is essentially September to the very beginning of February.
yeah,
So it's actually a tiny part of the year.
it is. Yeah,
You have the draft now, so this weekend in April, but
yeah,
they have training camps, so that's
yeah,
like 2 or 3 days together. Through now, the new rookies they tend to have more. They have to do these sort of all of these training camps. The more professional players they have. There's some mandatory, but generally they don't have to go to the optional ones. But the younger ones go to learn the plays and get used to the culture and all that sort of stuff. So it kind of doesn't really stop.
mm,
Some players have more time off and everything, but they're obviously familiar already. So it's actually a very short period of time that the NFL games are on. There's 18 now, isn't there?
yeah.
Um,
18. Yeah, yeah,
and three of those, no. And then you have the preseason. You have three preseason, but essentially they're not like the friendlies. Well, they're kind of like the friendlies that we have, but you tend to be, as you talked about the roster earlier, you tend to be
yeah.
trying out your not your backup players, but you wouldn't be playing your starters because if one of them does an ACL or something like that, and then they've signed to $100 million, $80 million
So,
guaranteed,
yeah,
they're out for a year and they're just sat at home raking in $20
yeah,
million. So you don't tend to risk them. You're trying to
mm,
figure out who fills the rest of that squad.
yeah,
So you have those games, and then yeah, it's sort of like one a week. You get 2 bye weeks now, I think.
yeah.
So it's a short period, but so we now have to wait from now for
So
like
to the fourth.
September.
Yeah,
So it goes quite quiet. So we thought about the podcast. We thought we should do it on draft so people can get it because
yeah,
football's a good game, but actually there's lots of games that we like to talk about and that we're
yeah,
interested in. We thought about doing Augusta and the Masters and stuff like
yeah, yeah.
previously. We'll probably will do a golf one in the future,
I
but
think so. Yeah.
yeah, so it's kind of waiting until September, which is 3 or 4 months.
It's a long wait. It's long.
It
Although
is,
you get a lot of you get obviously it's the kind of news from the practice squads and how it's going and stuff. Who's looking
yeah,
good? So
yeah.
we probably do a bit more around that. But yeah, it is fairly quiet, unfortunately, after the draft. It's then it gets serious right from the actual team's perspective. They're all in those training camps, working out, inducting all the rookies into the plays, which they call it. Which probably should do a one time thing on the play calls, right? Because obviously people watching it would be like, Why is this called hot dog 3 to 1 left? Right? Do you know what I mean? It's like, where
Oh, I
these
don't know if we know the play calls, but we can definitely describe the different types of play you can
exactly
have.
why it's happening. Yeah, what was it when
Um,
it happens? Essentially,
uh,
it's code words to try and deceive the opposition. That's as simple as
yes,
it goes,
yeah,
right? It's
it is.
that's what it
It's
is.
like I suppose they'd have the Arsenal set piece coach like
Yeah,
jumping up and down, like, oh yeah, I called that play. But they have coordinators that call the plays and all that sort of stuff.
exactly.
But it's
Yeah,
essentially saying we're going to do this, you're going to run here
yeah,
in code so that the other team doesn't know what they're doing. But
yeah,
um, yeah, Blue 42 Hut is pretty basic.
yeah,
They basically recite off nearly a paragraph of words now, and apparently everyone knows what that means.
yeah,
You never see a broken play, do you? So yeah, so it does go pretty quiet, but I suppose in the next couple of weeks, obviously you got the draft this weekend, and then you essentially you get the draft means that you get the rights to that player, and then you sort of they sign the
yeah,
contract. And the exciting thing is, and it always has been for Patriots, especially with Belichick, is the undrafted players. So the players that don't get picked in the draft,
yeah.
and then you can pick those up, and they can obviously be part of your squad, and you can see how they do and everything like that. So um, there's a couple of weeks, and then it does go a bit quiet. But America find a way to have a channel for every single sport they have. It's
Yeah.
constantly running throughout the year. Any news and anything is always updated on that. So there's always
Yeah.
something going on.
Exactly. I think even like, Good Morning Football started again, right, every day again now for
Yeah.
stuff. So they've always got something to talk about for like 2 hours or so. So, I guess there is always so many stories going around, and there is a lot of drama to be fair, the NFL as well. There's always a lot of drama as well in different ways, which is
There's
can
always someone getting arrested or
yeah,
killed or
exactly.
put in
That's the trouble,
prison.
right? Some kid hasn't quite learned that they shouldn't carry a gun around with them. Do you know what I mean? That's so there's always something like that going on. It's the same with NBA though, right? You hear that sometimes. Do you know what I mean? It's just sort of like at some point, America might change its policy on guns, but obviously, until
No,
then,
I don't think so.
no, exactly. I don't think so. But that's always gonna be an issue, right? And then some kids just don't really understand that. Yeah, I'm kind of playing for a team now. I shouldn't really be doing this or having that lurking around. But you know, it's America at the end of the day, right? That is where it is. So yeah,
Really.
very good. All right, well, there we go. That's our initial one on the NFL then. So let's see how the practice is going. We'll look forward to the start of the season, but be a little while before we have anything more so.
Yeah.